Well, it's the one-year anniversary of Russian invading Ukraine, and joining us today, history professor at Bluffton University, Dr. Perry Bush, and we're going to talk about that and much more. So thanks for joining us today.
It's always good to be here with you.
All right, so it is the one-year anniversary. Are you surprised that the Ukraine has stood up this long and where we're at in this war?
Yeah, Holly, I was like most commentators around the world and observers around the world. I assumed that Ukraine would fall. Russia has a huge army, huge military. Ukraine, I knew, would resist heroically, but I did not expect, nor did many other people, that Ukraine would be an independent sovereign nation a year later. And that, in fact, Russia would be stymied on its southeast border, having lost 100,000 or so soldiers in kind of a World War II tank combat. I mean, this has been a really remarkable year, and the Ukrainians are standing firm.
Also, another remarkable thing I think most people can agree on is the surprise visit to Ukraine by President Biden.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a surprising week. I mean, you know, he did a ruse, right? He was supposed to be in Poland on Tuesday anyway for a NATO meeting, but he kind of did a ruse with the Washington press corps and left D.C. at 4 a.m. with two reporters whose cell phones were taken away from them and a small coterie of security staff. And it was, you know, an overnight train trip from Poland into Kyiv. And there he appears, you know, Monday morning with Zelensky in front of the beautiful blue-walled Golden Dome Cathedral of St. Michael's on the global stage. Why, in fact, the drama was intensified by air raid sirens going off as he spoke. You know, we've had presidents go to war zones before, but usually that's with hundreds of thousands of American troops there. And so this was really kind of a dramatic moment as Biden stood with President Zelensky of Ukraine and pledged another $500 million in American military aid and pledged the ongoing solidarity of the American people with the people of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that ruffled Russians' feathers a little bit and got them a little bit more angry than they already are?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's remarkable. The New York Times had a piece on these dueling speeches that happened the next day. I mean, and these two leaders at that point, President Biden was in Warsaw, Poland, and Putin was in, of course, Moscow, and they're 700 miles apart. And they gave these two dueling speeches that both blamed the other for the cause of the war, and both said we're going to be there to the end. And then, of course, at the end of Putin's speech, he announced that Russia was withdrawing from the last nuclear treaty that it was in with the United States. So, look, Holly, it's remarkable how this appears to those of us who are of age like the depths of the Cold War, right? And those lines are hardening. The lines of cooperation that we used to have with each other to try to avert nuclear catastrophe appear to be ebbing away. And these are two governments that clearly are on ends with each other. And of course, Biden says we're going to stick there with Vladimir Zelensky and be with Ukrainians to the end. And Putin says Russia's prepared to, you know, they've lost 100,000 dead. The signals are, Putin is saying we'll lose another 300,000. Right. We're not going to give up on our efforts to conquer Ukraine. And in fact, once again blamed Ukraine and the West for being the aggressors in the war.
I know this is kind of hard. You need to look into your crystal ball and being a history professor, but what do you think the next year is going to bring? Well, how do you think this is going to go?
I don't know what else to conclude, but to say that it will bring a lot of more death and destruction and suffering. It's clear that, well, already Russia is mounting a spring offensive. Ukraine, the indications are, it's going to mount an offensive of its own towards the south to try to retake the Crimean coast and cut off Russian troops from Crimea and sever their supply line. And of course, all this will involve a lot more suffering. Russia's really made it clear they're going to wage total war on the Ukrainian people by launching wave after wave after wave of nightly kind of drone bombers at Ukrainian water treatment plants and electrical facilities to leave the people of Ukraine suffering cold and dark in their homes. That's what's been going on for months. The bombing will continue. The losses of civilian lives will continue. And of course, horrific casualty rates among the soldiers are continuing as the West then is increasingly supplying Ukraine with remarkably sophisticated offensive weapons now. I mean, you know, Abrams tanks from Lima, Ohio, right, are heading to Eastern Europe. Right. And the Germans are sending Ukraine their top tank. And so we're seeing a kind of a tank warfare that we haven't seen since 1944.
Right. It's tragic stuff happening over there. Dr. Perry Bush, thanks very much for joining us today.
Always going to be with you here at WIL, Holly. Thank you.
All right, Noon Edition continues in a moment.